What is good, everyone? My name is Orlando, alongside the one and only Art Edwards. How are you doing this evening?
Doing fantastic.
Feeling good?
Feeling good.
Same here, and there's never a shortage of sports conversation.
Right.
So that's why we have the opportunity to do this and have an extended conversation on some of the biggest stories from the week.
We got a big one this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So it happened.
Yes.
Damian Lillard traded to the Milwaukee Bucks on Wednesday. Your overall thoughts, Art, on the trade after it was all said and done and the dust settled, because they land Drew Holiday, which was kind of the headliner in this.
Yes.
They also land Deandre Ayton as the two big players in all of this.
Yes.
But then on Sunday, they trade away Drew Holiday to the Boston Celtics, land a couple of more picks, and then they bring back a couple of players in return. In Malcolm Brogdon and Robert Williams III.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you just your overall feel on how the Damian Lillard trade went down.
Well, I like what the Blazers ended up with. It would have been great if they could have sent Dame to Miami, but I also like the fact that the Blazers stood their ground. They weren't going to just trade him somewhere because he said, well, that's where I want to go, and not get back the maximum return. And I thought they did a good job with what they got back in return. You're right.
It was a shock to a lot of Trailblazers fans, and I think to the rest of the league, because Milwaukee's name was never really brought up through NBA insiders and those people that have been reporting all along. And then you throw in the fact that Dame had said that his preferred destination was Miami. I think a lot of folks weren't even looking in the direction of the Bucks, and they swoop in and get the deal done. So just on that alone, it was pretty surprising and kind of came out of nowhere.
It kind of did. You know what? On Tuesday, when I was putting my sports segment together, I was looking at, okay, these are the teams that they're talking about. And at that point, Toronto had moved to the top of the list. Miami was still there, probably right after Toronto, and then it was Dame staying in Portland after that. Boston kind of got some play, and Philadelphia some play, like they were interested. Milwaukee was down maybe at the bottom of that list, but no one was talking seriously about Milwaukee at all.
So Dame is heading to the Bucks, and the Blazers get a ton of assets back. DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams III, Malcolm Brogdon, Toumani Camara. They get a 2024 first-round pick from the Golden State Warriors. That is top 4 protected. They also get a first-round pick in 2029 from the Celtics. A 2029 first-round pick from the Bucks. A 2028 and a 2028 pick swap with the Bucks. So there's a lot going on there, and there's a chance that some of those picks could be really good, especially the couple that are unprotected and could end up anywhere in that first round.
Yeah, I think that's part of the key for it. I mean, they get younger with some of the people they bring in, because both Ayton and Williams are younger than Nurk, so they get younger there. I don't think that Brogdon will be staying with the Blazers, so I think there's a potential that they could get maybe a veteran player who could help them out, and more draft picks. So I think there's probably still that move to go. I don't really see Brogdon staying here. I mean, I think the Blazers made out really well in all of this.
Clearly, the Blazers wanted to go young. And they wanted to acquire as many assets, aka first-round draft picks, preferably, to kind of build this thing up again, knowing that they're going to be one of the youngest teams in the NBA. And we also know that the youngest teams in the NBA don't necessarily win a lot of games.
No. You know what? When you look at it, I mean, probably you hate to say it, because everybody wants to win. The fans want to see the team win. I want to see the team win. But if they ended up not being a playoff team next year, wouldn't be the worst thing that would happen to them if they ended up back in the lottery for one more year, because they'll have their own lottery pick if they ended up there, and another first-round pick. So wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if that happened. Then maybe they can find whatever they think the final piece is. They might be able to get that then.
For sure, and you're getting some serious development minutes. And guys like Scoot Henderson, who's 19 years old, 20 years old by the time he starts playing these games. Get that experience under his belt and quality minutes to work alongside somebody like Anthony Simons and Jeremy Grant and others. So, this is going to be a really young team. There's going to be some exciting moments. You throw in Shaedon Sharpe as well. But yeah, there's a long way to go to get back to where they once were.
Right. You know, when we saw them in the conference finals that one year, it's, you know, it is a long road to get back there, but it's a road that I can kind of see a path now. You know, I kind of see that there's a way forward if all these guys stay healthy and they develop along the kind of timeline that the Blazers think they can.
So also the Blazers say goodbye to Yusuf Nurkic, Nasir Little, Keon Johnson, who are all headed to the Phoenix Suns in return for Deandre Ayton, really.
Right.
So what do you like about Ayton? You're somebody that's been mentioning, hey, I think Ayton would be great here in Portland.
Yes, you know what? I like his athleticism. You know, the fact that he can really move around, really run. He could defend a little bit out on the perimeter, you know, maybe a little bit further out than Nurk could. Nurk was probably better closer to the rim. I think Ayton has a different kind of offensive game. I think he's going to be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to finishing around the hoop than Nurk was. Nurk tended to, you know, put up different kinds of shots. But Ayton's probably going to be a dunk guy. Oh, totally. And Ayton's been a really good rim finisher, rim runner as well. Yes. It's going to be fun to watch him in the pick and roll. Plus, he's 25 years old. Fits that timeline that Joe Cronin and company are looking forward to, kind of having everybody grow up together. And for him, he gets a new scenery, a fresh start. Here in Portland, and where expectations aren't going to be the same as they were for him in Phoenix. And he needs that new start because there were some issues. You know, did he really want to play here? How hard did he ever want to play? Those sorts of things. So this is going to be a fresh start for him. It's going to be fun to talk to all of these guys on Media Day this week. So we'll have much more on KGW and all of our social platforms as well. So stay tuned for that. Lastly, Damian Lillard, it's time to give him his flowers. 11 seasons here in Portland, just endless memories. And what really separated him from some of the other greats of the past, and I think why so many consider Damian Lillard the greatest of all time here in Rip City, is the way that he embraced this city. And it wasn't just the basketball accolades, because we know all of them in being the franchise's all-time leading scorer, the 71 points this year, gold medalist, et cetera, et cetera. But it was how he embraced the city and all the things he did in this community. Well, that was what was always great about him, because he really did care about the city of Portland and the people here, and he wanted to make sure that people understood that and knew that, and wanted people to know that he really was a part of the community, that it wasn't just, okay, I've come here to play basketball and then I'm hitting the road afterwards. I think he's already said, I'll be back in Portland, you know, it's where I'm going to live. Yeah, and so I think that's kind of a bittersweet ending for the Damian Lillard era, because we're seeing all of these images, and it seems like everybody has their own Dame story where they've ran into him in the community or seen him doing something really nice. We had a video of him just pulling up to a park in a U-Haul and just throwing out free shoes to all the kids that were there. Him marching on the Morrison Bridge alongside thousands during the pandemic, and just a time of a lot of unrest and all of everything that was going on in our world. And Dame was a part of it. And not to mention his respect program with all the high schools and just his camps. I mean, we were at so many of them. Art, I'm wondering if you have any stories about covering Dame, because I mean, you've been covering him since the beginning. Since he got here, you know, I would get out to the practice facility and we do all the interviews. One of them that really stands out was he had just finished up his degree at Weber State, and that was a big deal. You know, his mom wanted to make sure that he got that college degree. So he gets the college degree, and he's there, and we're asking him about it. Man, how does it feel to get that degree? He says, oh, it's great. And then somebody says, well, what did your mom say? And he said, I forgot to tell her. So they were all standing in the kitchen, and another relative called and starts talking to her about Dame getting his degree. And she's like, I didn't even know. He looked like he was just so hurt that he had forgotten to tell his mom. That's awesome. And Dame was just such a pro with the media. And we got to talk to him on a regular basis. Good day, bad day. Didn't matter. Did not matter. He was steady and a true pro in working with the media. And I told you, I'll never forget one of my first interviews when I got to Portland and worked at KGW was a one-on-one with Damian Lillard. And I remember thinking, like, oh, I'm so nervous. What am I going to say to him? What do I talk about? You know, it was my first big interview here at the station. And I remember one thing standing out that has resonated with me throughout the years, and that was Dame saying, I just want to be treated fairly. So whether it was good, bad, or whatever, just make sure you're doing that. And that has
stuck with me through all of my interviews, not just with the Blazers, but from high school to college and everything in between. And that has stood out to me because of how good he's been with the media and being so insightful. We knew that we could ask him that tough question and he would be willing to answer it. And there were so many times where we'd pull up for our live shot and we didn't really have anything, and we'd be able to go in the locker room pregame, especially before the pandemic, and pull Dame aside and be like, hey, I just need to talk to you about this, and he'd give us something. I know you've done that before in the past too.
You know, did that on things that weren't even basketball related. You know, what do you think of the protesting in Portland? I remember going into the locker room before a game and doing that, and not being sure what he would do. I mean, I knew he was a professional and he would handle it, but I wasn't sure how he was going to react to that kind of a question a couple of hours before they were playing a game.
Totally.
But he handled it. You know what? He had a wonderful answer, and he was a guy who was out there and showing people that he cared.
Yeah, and you and I did that multiple times with Dame.
Oh yeah.
Over the years, where it was just, Dame, can you talk to us for a minute?
Right.
And he always seemed to have time and never turned down a question, even when it wasn't wasn't an easy one to answer. So all the best to Dame as he starts his next chapter.
Yes.
With the Milwaukee Bucks. Going to be weird seeing him in green.
It will be. Maybe the Bucks and the Blazers can play in the championship one year.
Man, that's going to be crazy.
That would be wild.
And we'll see him back here for one game.
Yes, one game.
With the Bucks and the Blazers. All right, now let's switch gears, talk some college football.
Yeah.
How about those Beavers? Under the Friday night lights of Reser Stadium.
Yes.
They take down number 10 Utah at the time, 21-7.
Yep.
Defense really shined in that one. Utah playing without their starting quarterback, Cam Rising. What'd you see out of the Beavs in that game, Art?
Well, I saw the defense decide that they were just going to stand up and take care of business. I heard one of the defensive linemen talking after the game, and that was one of the things he said. You know what? We needed to do this because we didn't get it done the week before. And they definitely did the job. Utah is hurt because they don't have Cam Rising, but still, that's a bruising team that might have been able to do something with just running the ball. So I think the Beavers really made a statement, defensively, certainly. And the offense did exactly what I think the offense should do, which is just grind people into the artificial turf. Right.
And no team before the Beavers has been able to do that to Utah.
No.
And they kind of got away with it going without their starting QB. They're thinking to themselves, man, we were 1 week away to getting to the bye and being undefeated.
Yes.
Now they have one loss and the Beavers have one loss, and Oregon State is back in the Pac-12 title mix now.
Everybody's going to be talking about them now, and that's where they want to be, and they redeemed themselves for. It wasn't a bad game against Washington State. They fell behind early, and that really hurt.
That was a pick'em game.
That was a tough game. I mean, that was always going to be a tight game, and so I think now they're probably feeling much better about themselves, and they'll be back kind of on a roll.
You know what else kind of stood out now that I think about it was the big plays from Silas Bolden.
Yes.
Those were plays that they needed against Washington State to make that comeback. Yeah. And we were wondering, do they have enough in them to come from behind? Do they have those explosive plays? And it was good to see them do that.
It was. One of them was that play where it was just like a yard for the first down, and instead of just running it right up the middle, they did basically what looked like a little option. They pitched it out to him, and then he just streaks down the field for the touchdown using all that speed.
Back-breaking moment, fourth down, instead of just picking up the first. You land a huge blow.
A year ago with Jack Coletto, they'd just run right up the middle.
Right. We knew what was happening. You couldn't stop it.
Couldn't stop it. No.
Yeah. So now they're 4-1. They'll take on Cal next, and Cal coming off a win as well.
Yep.
Does that feel like another one of those games that the Beavs should win handily?
Yeah, I think so. I think that Cal's defense is maybe a little bit down this year. I think offensively they're pretty good, and they probably can score some points, but I think the defense is a little bit down, and that Oregon State will be able to kind of control things and do pretty much what they want to for most of that game.
Take care of business.
That's right.
Keep it moving.
Yep.
Continue to stay in the hunt.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of teams that remain in the hunt, how about the Oregon Ducks?
Oh, yeah.
Taking care of business against Stanford. The last time they went on the farm, they got caught slipping.
Yes.
They got upset in overtime when they were ranked third in the nation. It was a similar scenario this year, returning to Stanford. And at least for a quarter and a few minutes,
right,
it looked like they were in trouble, down 6-0, had just 6 yards in the first quarter. They flipped the script, the offense gets going, and it's 42-6 the final.
Yes.
What'd you think about the Ducks' performance in that game?
Well, I thought once they got going, it was just what the Oregon Ducks do. They score at will, and the defense is a much better defense than last year. It's like they attack more. They have guys who can attack. So where they have 5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. That's something that we didn't really see last year. It was almost as if they kind of had to play back just a little bit more. So it's nice to see them attack like that. They did it against Colorado. The others, they could do anything they wanted.
Sure.
But it's nice to see them kind of attacking that way on defense now.
One of the folks on the Pac-12 network brought up a good point in playing games against Stanford, especially in that environment.
Yes.
You kind of have to get yourself up for it. And I know Dan Lanning doesn't want to hear that. They need to be ready to go from the first whistle, from kickoff, and really dominate.
Yes.
But it is still, I've got to imagine, difficult when you go from Autzen Stadium that is rocking nearly 60,000 fans to going to Stanford where there's not 60,000 fans there and having to get up for that and also deal with the style of play that they have. There's probably got to be some adjustments going on there.
I would say so. I was listening on the radio because I was out doing another story, and I'm listening on the radio, and the announcers made a big deal about the fact that they saw the Ducks players on the sideline right before the game kind of bouncing around, looking like they were trying to get themselves fired up and excited. And their take on it was, well, look, they look like they're ready. Well, then they come out and Stanford puts a 7.5 minute drive on them. Thankfully, they were able to stop them at only a field goal. But man, at the very beginning, I was like, what's going on? As I'm listening on the radio, I said, I can't believe this.
And clearly that's a great game plan against the Ducks is you got to keep that offense off the field for as long as you can. If you do that, you're going to be in the game because they're not going to have all those opportunities.
No. What do they have the ball for like a minute and a half of the first quarter? So you can't, it's hard to score in a minute and a half all the time. So they, Stanford did the right thing at the very beginning. They couldn't sustain it, and then Oregon said, yeah, fine, okay, we're ready, and let's go do it. And they took care of business. Again,
another week of the Bo Nix, Troy Franklin connection. They're doing big things. They clearly are part of the engine that is this elite offense right now. The running game got going, a pair of 88-yard rushers. But now, this was expected. They were supposed to win big. Now, they're not expected to win big anymore. They're undefeated, 5-0. They start the season that way for the first time in a decade, and now they get a week off to prepare for Washington. Washington also gets a week off. It's a top 10 matchup up at UW. Your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, you know what? Before I saw what UW did yesterday, I was thinking, man, I don't know. It's going to be really, really tough. Still going to be really, really tough. But I wonder now, because UW hasn't really played anyone. So I wonder now if UW is not necessarily any better than they were last year. And I think Oregon has improved. The offense maybe not is about the same because the offense was great last year, but Oregon's defense I think is much improved from last year. And I'm not sure that we see that kind of improvement from UW. And it was a tight game, and that was the game that Bo Nix got injured, isn't it, at the very end of the game? So he was kind of limited, and I know they brought Ty Thompson in, so for the last couple of drives, he wasn't really able to do much. And it was still a really tight game. I feel like I'm giving Oregon a bit of an edge in this game, but you know what? It's up there in Seattle. Who knows what the weather's going to be and all kinds of things.
It'll be important to make sure the ground game is going. Bucky Irving has been great, but he's also had some help along the way and a mixture of running backs there. And so, I think you're right. The way the Ducks are playing right now, you hope that they can continue to keep their foot on the gas with a week off, and you hope that the extra week allows them to be more comfortable in facing UW. But it sets up fantastic as one of the biggest games that we'll see this year.
Two fantastic quarterbacks. Some people say that Penix is the best drop back quarterback in the nation. Because he's more of a let me just drop back, survey the field, and get it out there and find my guy, as opposed to Bo Nix, who will move around, and Caleb Williams, who runs around like crazy. As opposed to those guys. So it'll be interesting to see what the Ducks are able to do to sort of keep that under control, and really whether or not UW's defense is going to be tough enough and stout enough to slow the Ducks down.
We get 2 weeks to talk about this game, basically. And it's
Yes.
funny because you know that everybody's going to be mentioning the elite offenses, the high-powered, Knicks versus Penix, Heisman Trophy, blah, blah, blah. But it's going to be funny if this game comes down to defense and it's a low-scoring game and they both have trouble moving the ball because the weather's bad or whatever, right? Like, it's going to be funny if it comes down to defense. But you win however you can win. You don't apologize for it. But I know that I'm really excited to see this game and to see how it plays out.
Oh, I am too. Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun one.
Oh, thank you so much for rocking with us here and listening to us talk a little extra here on KGW. Good night, everyone.